Hello everyone. I noticed this isn't the usual TFT content that I put out, but recently Riot put out a Sona rework on the PvE, and well, being a Sona main with over 700k mastery around gold elo, I'm more or less speaking as the average player with an affinity for my beloved champion in previous seasons. A lot of people call her Sona, other people call her just a buffed up caster minion, but for me, I call her the Misfortunate Maven. Sona was first added into League at around version 1.0.0.101, way back in the day when League could run on actual potatoes, the graphics weren't really good, and camps were completely different. The way you played champions in different roles wasn't defined yet. It was a completely different game. But even when she was released way back then, her abilities haven't changed much since release, besides minor tweaks in her passive and possible damage numbers in her abilities' power and minor quality of life updates regarding them. Her Q, Hymn of Valor, deals a bolt of magic sound to the two nearest enemies, with champions having the highest priority, and any ally near the aura within 3 seconds got free damage on their next auto attack. Sona's W, Aria of Perseverance, heals herself and the most wounded ally by a small amount. Any allies near the aura will receive a small shield to boot for stopping poke or for potential dots that could kill them. Her E, Song of Celerity, gives Sona increased movement speed for 3 seconds, and if she takes no damage, it'll extend up to 7 seconds. Any allies that are in the aura will also gain movement speed, but just only for the 3 seconds. And Sona's passive is Paracord, in which after 3 spell casts, it gives her next auto attack a buff based on whatever the last spell was cast. If the last spell that was cast was a Q, she deals bonus magic damage on her auto, and it becomes essentially a shotgun auto with AP magic damage. Her W reduces the target's size just a bit, and reduces their DPS for a few seconds, similar to Exhaust. And if it's her E, the target is slowed for a few seconds. Sona's signature ultimate is Crescendo, which passively gives ability haste based on the rank of the ability and stuns any champion struck for 1.5 seconds and makes it do a little bit of a dance. Now, I might be missing a few things and a few details, but I'll get into those later. But with all the abilities out of her way, let's discuss the main issue in the room. Why is no one playing the Mute Goddess ever since the days of Ardent Censor, Enchanter metas, or Sona Lane Sona with Dark Harvest? Well, to me, there are 4 main reasons. The first reason for a champion's decline in prey rate is that a certain role is based off the meta surrounding that champion. Season 11 has been kind to champions with certain qualities such as being overpowered, high roaming potential, or strong flexibility within drafting. Throughout Pro Prey and even solo queue, roaming champions such as Bar, Alistar, Thresh, they've been dominating games and have been applying pressure across the map while letting the AD carries essentially just farm it out, get some XP, or get kills through their strong laning phase. You have OP champions such as Rel and Seraphine, which have been consistent pick bans throughout spring 2021. And then you have flex picks like Galio, who can flex mid, top, or even support. Senna, which can go in either ADC or support. Gragas, which can be a top laner, a jungler, or support. Karma and Lulu, which can go into the solo lanes and essentially be enablers for their hard carries in the mid lane. And you have Pantheon, who is essentially a 4-way flex. And it gives drafting for your team a bit of an edge, because if you can flex those champions, then your team is going to pick bad champions, and then you can counterpick those bad champions, giving you an even bigger advantage. The thing with Sona is that she isn't any of it. She doesn't have high roaming potential. She is not overpowered. She doesn't have any flexibility currently in her kit. She was pretty much put into the support role. and that's it. She could soul lane in the past, but not currently. And it brings me to my second reason. Her kit is a jack of no trades. To non-Sona mains, she's essentially treated as what I said earlier, as a caster minion with Banner of Command. She used to roam a bit effectively with her E, but ever since patch 10.4, when she was being seen along with Soraka doing Dark Harvest top lane, when top lane was just in an abysmal state, nerfing solo roaming Sona by giving all of her basic abilities essentially an extra 30 mana, and incentivizing Sona players to essentially stick with an ally at all times. Her roaming and solo lane potential as somewhat of a niche cheese pick was gutted. You can't go AP Sona ever since the change. And on top of her mana costs, her abilities don't have a lot of punch for their price. The W heal and shield is pitifully bad, with 30 HP and 20% AP healing, and 25 HP and 30% AP shielding for 105 mana. And if you touch an ally, it reduces down to 75. Every other enchanter that can heal or shield does it way better, for way more, and for way cheaper. Basically, every enchanter does their job, but better. That's just not just for healing and her shielding, it's for most of her abilities. If you look at someone like Karma or Lulu, they have much better shielding, they have better movement options, they have more innate damage in their kit, and they even have stuff that Sona doesn't have, such as CC on basic abilities. The thing with Sona is that she has invisible power with her auras, and she doesn't really have a lot of skill expression. Compare her to low elo and high elo. What's the difference in skill expression of her abilities? Not much, besides, let's say, landing ult on a multiple people and positioning. But with positioning, understanding where to move and so on, that gets more higher and more understood the higher up the elo rating you go into. And it's not a skill expression of the champion, it's just game knowledge. A good Lulu will shield, she'll polymorph, she'll know when to E the minions to Q them in order to get more poke in. With other champions that are enchanters, you have that skill expression. With Sona, she pretty much has to play essentially touch tag every time she uses an ability, and it just completely sucks. And another problem with Sona is that she's a scaling champion. Now, scaling champions in roles is perfectly fine. We have Kassadin, Camille, Ezreal, Tristana. In the support, it's very difficult to have that unless you have some agency. Sona, only agency that she has is essentially being a glass cannon poke bully. But ever since the changes, she's running out of gas way too fast, unless she's consistently playing tag with her goddamn ADC. And not only that, her power is gated by the levels of her ult, which grant her ability haste, which allows her to spam more quickly of her abilities. And when you're in a role with the least amount of gold and XP, and when other supports are roaming around impacting more lanes, and you're just only impacting bot lane, then you're going to struggle pretty badly pre-6 and up until level 11, where you kind of feel like a champion again. The third issue for Sona, but also other champions as well, is the item rework. For some champions that were left in the cold, like Udyr and Skarner in years past, or Mumu, it helped them catapult back into relevancy. For other champions that were staple picks, like Azir or Lissandra, it left them with suboptimal builds, or only one build that constricted the playstyle of the champ, where before they could mix around and flex between different builds. And Sona was no different. With Sona, her basic build path is that she goes Spell Thief's Edge with double pots early in the game, backs for a tier for just higher mana pool up to a small cap of around 360 mana, and then later gets Boots or a Ruby Crystal. And with Tyr no longer refunding 10% mana, but generates a flat amount each time you cast, it makes you feel much worse, and you're only using the Tyr as essentially a placeholder. Not to mention Archangel Staff being annoying to build, where you just have a Tyr, a needlessly large rod, and an amp tome, and you gotta wait for a decent chunk of change in order to complete it into one item. It just doesn't do well. Other enchanters will just rush straight into Moonstone Renewer or rush into Ionian Boots or Movement Speed Boots, while Sona has to either play conservatively in lane, use her mana wisely, antithetical to her heavy lane dominant style in some matchups, or has to build scaling components just to maintain the same style of laning phase. It's a lose-lose situation for both playstyles. You're basically put in this catch-22 and no one likes it. Not only that, in certain matchups, Sona is completely useless pre-6 if the enemy support knows what they're doing. Her rune choice is essentially just Summon Aerie with Manifold Band, Transcendence, and Gathering Storm. You could go Scorch if you want to, due to the nature of games closing quickly with Presence of Mind and Cut Down, or you could go Guardian and go more tank oriented depending on the matchup. You're essentially forced down the supportive route. You couldn't go somewhat pseudo-tanky with healing, or just AP auto burst mage, because it's the only style that makes her somewhat successful this season, and it's completely insane. That's why Sona's win rate, if you look ever since the recent changes, she's fallen off a cliff, and the only times where you saw her peak in popularity were the Ardent Censer meta around Season 6, Season 7, the Sona Taric, Sona Top Kench comps that every pro AD carry, even double it, hated playing Sona. With that being said, I just hope that the mini rework could just alleviate some of the issues that hurt our mute musician Magical Mommy GF. But with many reworks and even full scale VHUs, I'm reserved and very doubtful at this point, because they are either huge hits, revitalize the champion completely, or completely alienate the fan base. Speaking of the points, just cue the clip and show the goddamn criminal on the screen.
That's my bar! Shit. He copied my whole fucking flow!
That's kissed me through the phone!
He copied my whole fucking flow! Word for word, bar for bar!
Yep, it's Seraphine. She's essentially the nexus from all of my previous points, and then some. When she was released at around October 10th, 2020, everyone was mad. Basically, she took Sona's entire kit, improved it, was tailor-made to play both solo lanes and as a support. And what was the worst part was that Sona, a month prior, on September 2nd, 2020, got a voiceover, got new voice lines and everything, instead of a rework that the mains have been begging for freaking years. They essentially just made it into a new champion. You know the old meme of Mordekaiser Aatrox mains of saying, oh, can you please just give us our old champion back, just put it into a new champion? But they did it for Sona. And not only that, the way that Seraphine was introduced, it got so bad that the entire League main subreddit for all the different mains were just like, we stan with the Sona mains and the Scar mains. Fuck Seraphine. That's basically it. Now, here's the thing. Is Seraphine viable? Yes, completely broken beyond her belief. Does she have any itemization issues? No, she could be a mage in the mid lane, she could be AB carry in the bot lane, or she could be an enchanter in top, mid, or support. Does she have issues with her kit? Well, now, does she have issues with regarding her kit? Well, her Q's a bit hard to land because it's like a Nico Q, but almost every single ability is essentially copied from Sona, improved to the point where it essentially just gives her new life, and her E is kind of original even though it's on the thinner side. Seraphine essentially committed identity theft, and with all of Sona's problems, What does Riot do with her? Seriously, what does Riot do with the whole Sona Seraphine dilemma? At this point, you have to give her some differentiation so that she remains loyal to the original fan base while at the same time separating it from Sarah. With her Seraphine's release, Riot has dug a stylistic hole that cannot be explained or fixed by lore. Riot can't delete Seraphine because if they did, they can just delete whatever champion that was a pain in the ass to balance if they wanted to. And changing Seraphine or Sona with reworks would just alienate either of the fan bases or both of the fan bases and take them away from League or even all of other Riot's other games. And it sucks to have some character that you connect only to replace with something newer that doesn't have the same charm as the original. With all that being said, that's the reason why I call Sona the mystical Maven of the strings. It's a little different from the other content I've produced, but I'd like to thank a few people. One of them being Exil for kind of giving me a bit of inspiration on how I wanted to tackle this type of video, and to also Vars, who posted on the Sona Main subreddit that he would do a why no one plays Sona video. And as a Sona main, I kind of wanted to give my context or my reasoning on why Sona just hasn't been performing as well, why I haven't played her a lot ever since ever in season 11. And I just hope that, I get that same passion playing her again. So anyways, have a wonderful day. Peace.